Welcome to If People Only Knew, the show that brings untold stories to light. I'm your host, Anna Matson. Let's get started. Welcome to the show. This is part 2 of If People Only Knew Who's Running This Town. If you didn't watch part 1, please go watch it. It's going to give you some very important context on what we are talking about next. Now, like I said, a lot of people are following this because I started talking out about a Freedom of Information Act request. If you're unaware, a Freedom of Information Act request, or FOIA is what we call it, is a request for public records. And you can actually request public records from your local town, your state, and even the federal government. And I do a lot of FOIA requests, a lot of journalists do, to get information on certain stories. So I FOIA'd the EPA, I FOIA'd Homeland Security, Georgia, some towns in Georgia, to find out what was going on with the situation. And of course, I do it to my own town. So back in February 2023, after I heard about all of this stuff going on that we talked about in the first episode with, Angela Wallace getting put on the Planning Commission, this Holly Axe group, things happening with Ryan Delaney, and some other stuff, just like a lot of whispers of stuff going on, I'm like, okay, let me just do a request and see what comes up. And yes, you can do a request on text messages. A lot of people don't know that. In fact, there was actually kind of a famous situation. I'm not sure if you know, if you're not in the state of Michigan, it was pretty big in Michigan, but it actually did make nationwide attention. There was a Detroit mayor, Kwame Kilpatrick, and he was, I believe, 8 felonies. He was charged with 8 felonies, all because of a FOIA request that uncovered text messages about whatever he had going on at the time. So he ended up resigning, and it was a whole thing. So he served his time and all that. So that's why this is so important. It's a very important tool for us. It helps us keep our government accountable, keeps them transparent, even when they don't want to be. So I had never done a request at this time. Like I said, February, I believe 2023. I had never done a request. I just knew about that you could do one. And in fact, I actually met with village manager Jerry Walker at the time because I didn't do one before. And I asked his opinion if the wording of my request was okay, and to make sure it wasn't worded too broadly, because requests can be denied if they're too broad and take too much time because there's multiple departments or whatever have you. Okay, it's a whole thing. So I met with him. And I said, okay, this is what I'm thinking about turning in. Do you think this is good? He said, yes, that's good. Send it to the clerk. And that's what I did. And the request was for all communications between Ryan Delaney and Sherilyn Everly, Ryan Delaney and Joanna Barnes, Ryan Delaney and Kristen Watt, Ryan Delaney and April Brandon, and some more people between 10/1/2022 and present day. So about 4 months. Yeah. And I think like a week later, we were at a meeting, and Jerry Walker told me, my husband, hey, can you come talk to us real quick? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, just so you know, I've talked to the attorney, and it looks like he's going to deny some of your request. I'm like, what do you mean, Jerry? I'm like, he can't do that. And he was like, I don't know. He says he's going to do it. I'm like, okay. He's not allowed to, but we'll see. And also, every state is different. I know for the federal government, they actually have 20 business days to respond to the request, saying whether it was approved, denied, or denied in part, and why, if it was denied. And in Michigan, you have 5 business days. Now, they can ask for a 10 business day extension. In this case, they did not. So I submitted the request on February 15th, 2023. And they did not respond to it until March 7th, 2023. So like 3 weeks later. And they said, your FOIA request dated February 15th, 2023 is granted in part and denied in part. It is denied to the extent you see communications that do not fall within the Act's definition of public records. A public record is a writing prepared, owned, used in the possession of, or retained by a public body in the performance of an official function. Communication by public officials that do not relate to an official function are not subject to the act. And then they cite a court case. Your request is worded so broadly that it encompasses Mr. Delaney's purely personal communications, and it is denied to that extent. Now here, again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is just what I know. When they deny a request, they have to specifically state what part of the law gives them that authority to deny it. They can't just say it's denied. They have to cite to the law and say this provision in this act allows us to deny. Okay, they didn't do that. They said it is granted in as much as it seeks Mr. Delaney's communications, this is the key, concerning his nomination for appointment to the Planning Commission. And that's not what I requested. I requested all communication between Delaney and several other people between a time frame. Not once did I say the word planning. When I met with Jerry Walker, I didn't say it had anything to do with planning, nothing. And they later said in a meeting that they interpreted it as appointments to the Planning Commission. They assumed, because of everything that happened with the appointments to the Planning Commission and my husband was applying for it, they assumed that I was looking just for information for the Planning Commission, but I wasn't. So completely illegal what they did. They are not allowed to speculate about what information I want. I put it in black and white what information I wanted. So I sent them a letter, I think within the day, citing the law. It was very nice. It was a nice letter. And saying okay, this is why I think your decision is wrong. And by the way, at this point, I'm not even getting into it with them that their request is completely late. The law says that if it is past the due date, then it's considered automatically denied. So they technically wrongfully denied everything according to the law. But real quick, so I don't want to forget, they did give me some things that do relate to the Planning Commission. So they called me saying your FOIA is ready, come pick it up. So I went to the office, I believe it was $53. And I didn't actually see anything. They just said pay for it. And then they gave it to me. So I actually had no idea what it was denied or whatever until I actually paid and received it. That's when I found out it was only to do with planning. So I did get a text message between Ryan Delaney and April Brandon saying, so Delaney told April, by the way, Jerry is proposing Ryan Matson, Anna's husband, for Planning Commission. And again, we didn't really have a relationship with these people at all. So why did you have to point out that it was me, that I'm his wife? I just think that's inappropriate for government. You're supposed to be professional, and his application to the Planning Commission had nothing to do with me. And why did that need to be brought up? And then that's when she was like, Angela Boston Wallace is interested. And they're okay, sent her the application. So I'm assuming my husband was the only applicant at the time, and they quickly got Angela to apply. So there was someone else. I don't know, but that is something I got. Okay. So like I said, I sent a letter for them to reconsider that this was nowhere near enough records what I asked for. They didn't respond at all. So eventually I got an attorney, and at first the attorney just tried to talk to them and said, hey, you had these requests, you didn't respond to them properly. My client would like her public records. So we weren't even threatening court at this time. We were just going back and forth with their attorney, my attorney. And at a point, their attorney called mine and said, what's Anna's plan here? What's her game? And my attorney was like, she wants her public records. That's it. And the attorney was like, okay, yeah, set aside the request. What's her end goal here? And I don't throw out the gender card often, if ever, very rarely, but I really don't think they would have said that if I was a man. I really just think they thought that I was playing some game, but I wasn't. I'm legally entitled to public records, and I was asking for them, and they would not give them to me. And that was that. So Then after a lot of back and forth with my attorney, their attorney, they weren't budging at all. We tried to appeal the decision to the board. So there's two things you can do in the state of Michigan. Again, not legal advice, but there's two things you can do in the state of Michigan if you believe your request was wrongfully handled or wrongfully denied or overcharged. You can appeal to the head of the public body, which almost, if ever, it rarely goes well because the public body is the one that denied the request. So why would they just randomly overturn that decision? They're going to protect themselves. So I appealed to village council. They're the head of the municipality, okay? I appealed to them and they barely had any discussion. What they did say, I believe it was actually April Brandon at the time, she was like, we discussed this in closed session in length. Oh, okay. So right there is actually another violation. You do not have authority to go in closed session to talk about a Freedom of Information Act request. So they got themselves in trouble with that one as well. And then they barely discussed and just voted that they're not going to appeal it. Okay. Then I actually submitted 3 more requests within a couple weeks of each other. And they asked for extensions for them, but then they ignored their own date. So it was 5 business days, asked for a 10-day extension. I think it was May 6th or something they gave themselves, and then they blew past it. So on May 8th, if I'm remembering my dates correctly, it's very much around what I'm saying. So it was May 8th, 2023, we filed for court. It was the next business day after they blew past their deadline, we filed for court. Because at this point, I mean, you're talking 4 months in between where we're trying to go back and forth. I appealed. I tried to do everything I could to remain out of court, but they forced our hand. They were refusing to give me public records. And so that was the only other option for me. Village council, Ryan Delaney at the time was village president. April Brandon was on the board. Jim Perkin, all these people were on the board. They could have decided to end it there with the appeal, but they decided to kick the can down the road and end up in court. Okay. And village staff, everyone had a part to play in the village. Village staff were the ones that wrongfully denied it in the first place and didn't answer properly. And village council could have overturned that decision and they didn't. So I'll talk about it more later, but the village tried to play victim in this entire scenario. I am going after them. No, I was trying to do everything I could just to get my records, which I'm lawfully entitled to. The public records are property of the taxpayers, and they were doing everything they could to hide public records. So this was not, oh, poor us. No, the village had an opportunity to correct it, and they didn't. So multiple opportunities, I will say. So when I sued on 3 different counts. Mainly the Freedom of Information Act, but there was also Open Meetings Act I'll talk about in a second. So count 1, Freedom of Information Act, seeking compelled disclosure of public records, which you don't sue on Freedom of Information Act to get rich, okay? You sue to get your public records, and then you're allowed to, under Michigan law, collect your attorney fees and court costs, okay? So that's what I was asking for. Just wanted to make me whole. That's it. Count 2, violations of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. The Open Meetings Act it's kind of self-explanatory. So meetings need to be open to the public. And there's certain things in there that they have to follow. So they have to post notice of the meeting. They have to allow public comment. If there is a quorum present, if there's a majority present of the council, they have to allow public comment. That is not optional. And there were 3 meetings in a row, back to back, that they did not allow public comment. So violations. So that's one of the things I sued on. Also, like I said, they went in an illegal closed session. When you go in closed session, there's very limited reason why you can go in closed session, which is when they go in a separate room where the public can't see them and we can't see anything what's going on. We don't know what they're talking about. There's very limited reasons why they can go in closed session. Like school boards can go in closed session to talk about disciplinary action for a student, okay? Because that shouldn't be out in the open, right? If they have pending litigation, even this, like this is very stringent. If there's pending litigation, they can go in closed session to talk about settlement. I should have pulled up the exact wording, but settlement talks if it's going to impact the result of the court case, something like that. So it's very strict. And yeah, like I said, they admitted that they went in closed session to talk about my FOIA requests before I even sued them. So they absolutely could not do that. And then count 3, insufficiency of counsel procedures regarding public comment, because their procedures didn't outline that every meeting has to have public comment. So that's kind of the same thing as the open meetings. So it was a fun year and a half. Let me tell you. A year and a half of my life just for my records that I will never get back. There was so much gaslighting, so much misogyny, so much hiding by the government. Man, if you don't hate the government now, just try to do a Freedom of Information Act request for something that they're trying to hide, and you will hate the government. And just as one example of what they tried to do, everything was such a lie from them when they tried to respond to motions and stuff that we were submitting. And even in one of their responses, they put that the minutes from one of the meetings do not show that the public provided any comments and that there were no members of the public present. Because remember, I was suing because they didn't allow public comment. And they were trying to say, well, there was no one even there. Okay, I'm kind of known in town for going to the most meetings. And the meetings are recorded. They're on YouTube. And that meeting that they're saying no one was there, I was at. And so in our response motion, we put the link to the video. And it was funny because at an hour and 30 minutes, Counselor Kinnaman acknowledges plaintiff is in attendance by stating, quote, Anna, I didn't even see you sitting back there. So he acknowledges me in the meeting. So it's just stuff like that. It's like, you can try to lie, but I have record of everything. So we went through months of that, going back and forth, and the court ordered us to do mediation. You know, when you sue people, you hardly ever actually go in front of the judge and a jury. And I actually didn't ask for a jury trial. You can ask for a bench trial where the judge decides the case. I did that because I thought this case was so clear cut that we don't need to waste a jury's time. But the court asked us to do mediation, thought that we could settle this in mediation and move on. And we couldn't even decide on a mediator, which that should have been your telltale sign that this wasn't going to go well. So we ended up having to have the court pick a mediator. So we scheduled it out. I had to pay $750 cash. The village was supposed to pay $750 for the mediator as well. The day of mediation, me and my attorney are ready to go. And we find out from the mediator, not from the Village of Holly, from the mediator, that the Village of Holly does not plan to attend mediation. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean they're not going to attend mediation? And she was like, yeah, apparently they didn't even pay their deposit. Like, I guess the mediator, her staff was, kind of busy or something. They didn't even notice that the village didn't pay for mediation at the time. And yeah, we had to find out through her. She was like, yeah, I contacted them. She's like, I'm ready to go, but they're refusing to do it. And I told my attorney, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean they're not doing mediation? This is court mandated. And my attorney was like, is it court mandated or is it suggested? I'm like, no. It was mandated by the court. So he looks up the motion to make sure. And yeah, it said it was court ordered by a certain date. And that day after that decision was made, my attorney put in a motion asking the court to put them in contempt of court because they were defying a court order. And I just want to read part of that motion that my attorney wrote and submitted because it was so good. It was so good. He said, here defendant was aware, defendant being Village of Holly, was aware of the mediation order and its deadline to mediate on or before February 1st, 2024. And he also attached attachments, emails and stuff that they knew, that they were notified, everything. Okay, so it was clear. He goes on to say, defendant was also aware that mediation was scheduled to occur on January 31st, 2024. Defendant, however, unilaterally decided it would not mediate before the deadline, less than 6 hours before mediation. This is an intentional violation of the mediation order, and defendant must be held in civil contempt for its refusal to abide by this court's orders. This is not to mention the fact that this type of conduct is exactly what this case is about. Defendant continues to interfere with plaintiff's rights under the law. Defendant has shown a clear pattern of interfering with plaintiff's rights under the Freedom of Information Act and Open Meetings Act, going so far as demanding she pay defendant's attorney fees to respond to a FOIA request. Now, plaintiff has been forced to seek relief in this court. Defendant ignores this court's orders, resulting in unnecessary fees and costs to be incurred. Defendant apparently believes it is above the law and this court, as it has no regard for either. Man, did that summarize the case up, their conduct up so well. Very awesome. So after we submitted that motion, they were calling us within the week to settle the case. They did not want to go in front of that judge. We had all the evidence. You know, there's a lot of law that is very gray, like it's open to interpretation. In my opinion, the Freedom of Information Act is not one of those laws. You have 5 business days to respond, and you can ask for a 10-day extension. If you don't, you're in violation. Like it's very clear cut. Okay. So, and then, you know, asking the court to put them in contempt of court, really, they did not want to go in front of that judge to hear the result of that. So they called asking us to settle, and I got everything I wanted. They paid all of my attorney fees and court costs. Again, I did not make a dime. Okay. It was just reimbursement for the actual cost. The village provided an affidavit of the village council president, Ryan Delaney, and the Village of Holly clerk, attesting that they have produced all records responsive to plaintiff's FOIA request that were subject of her complaint. And then they also, in accordance with the Michigan Freedom of Information Act, the village will continue to permit public comment at all regularly scheduled and special meetings and at all budget study sessions where a quorum is present. And the village will continue to make an announcement at each regular and or special meeting stating when public comment is permitted. In accordance and in addition, and in accordance with the OMA, the village shall follow the OMA with respect to any study session or committee meeting when applicable, which they've already violated, by the way. But we're not really going to get into that. So then number 4, the village will continue to diligently attempt in good faith to adhere to all applicable laws in the conduct of its public meetings. And yeah. Now, keep in mind, when you settle a case, no one is technically found like guilty or someone won, okay? You settle it before it actually reaches the judge. But I'm just saying, I got everything I wanted. And I got hundreds of records in the process too that they wrongfully denied me. And they even said, we'll send them to you, but we think plaintiff already has it. Like we already sent it to her, but we'll do it again. And we asked, do you have any evidence that you sent it before? Like the office has cameras. Do you have like video footage of me coming in, picking up these documents? Do you have emails, anything? And they couldn't provide anything. They were saying for the 3 requests that they just blew past the deadline. They kept lying, saying that they did give me records when they didn't. So, and I even went as far as signing an affidavit saying I never have received these documents before. Like I said, it was a year and a half of my life that I'll never get back. Now, moving on, we're going to start talking about April Brandon. she, at the time when Delaney was elected president, she was running just for like the regular council. So she was on council for 2 years, and then she ran for village president. Now, April Brandon runs a Holly, Michigan Facebook group. It's called Holly, Michigan Open Discussion Forum. There's currently 35,000 members in it, which Holly, Michigan, there's only 12,000 citizens. So obviously there's a lot of people that are not from the community in there. I think that I was really ignorant at the time, and I didn't really do my research, and I just thought she was pleasant, I guess. And I kind of fell into the trap of like voting on name recognition like most people do, and I'll never make that mistake again. But what I didn't know at the time is that she heavily censors that group. And I know that because she censored me from the group. She blocked me, and we'll get into exactly what happened. So there were a lot of people that always complained about not knowing when events were. Like there were car shows. I mean, we do so many events in town. The list is endless, to be honest with you. But so many times people were like, I didn't even know this event was happening, like after the fact. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start making a community calendar. And I actually suggested this to the village of Holly numerous times. The town I lived at, they actually sent out a newsletter with our water bill each month. So like everyone knew what was going on. And I suggested that multiple times. They already sent us our water bill, just put in a calendar with it. They never wanted to do that. So I took it upon myself for free, not being paid. Okay. Just my little thing that I contributed to the community. And I made weekly calendars. And it was for a lot of the events that were happening. Now, here's the thing. The calendar, teeny tiny social media calendar, there's literally no way I could fit everything because there's 10,000 things that happen in town on a weekly basis. So, like one of the things people started, I don't even want to say people, there was like one person that complained that I was not adding in karaoke night at the Moose. And I said, okay, well, a ton of bars do karaoke night, and I can't fit it all on this calendar. On the calendar, I mainly did events that the government was like sponsoring or doing. Like I put meetings. I also reached out to the chamber when I did this and said, okay, any chamber events going on. I tried to look at the library website when they had stuff going on, stuff like that. And there was just from the same person a complaint like, okay, like karaoke night, you're not putting it on there. And I said, when I posted these calendars, I always said, I can't fit everything, but if you know of something that's not on the calendar, please put it in the comments so it's like a one-stop shop, okay? So everything's in one place. And I did this, I want to say 3 or 4 months I did this, where every single week I was posting this calendar, and it was so successful. I had so many compliments and people reaching out to me asking if they could put stuff on the calendar and everything. It was great. And one day I woke up and all of the calendars were removed. I got a notification that your post was removed from the group by an admin. And the reason it said group rules broken, no spam, no sales or aid requests, self-promotion, spam, and irrelevant links aren't allowed. You cannot sell any items, advertise, or promote. This is not a sales group, but as a courtesy, local businesses may post up to once a week. You may not request aid from the group. There is a Holly resource group for that. Only extreme circumstances for fundraising are permitted, such as house fires with admin permission. I was not self-promoting anything. I was actually promoting the town. So even looking at that rule that they used, I did not qualify for that rule. Okay. So one of the other removals that I clicked on, they actually did put like a little note, and they put, we've received questions and complaints that there are incomplete, these are incomplete and folks are missing events as it isn't a one-stop shop. You're going to have to do this in your own group. You can believe what you want, but I highly doubt people were missing events because it wasn't on the calendar. And like I said, there was one person that complained, at least to me. Okay. There wasn't, I guess they could have complained to admins, but I always, every single time I put, if I missed anything, please put it in the comments. And she's referring, I said, in your own group, I did create for a short period a small Facebook group where I posted some of this stuff, and it was like no elected officials allowed because people were just so upset of everything happening in this group with all the elected officials. But it wasn't something I really took that seriously. It was just kind of like a side thing. Anyway, now keep in mind, April Brandon removing all those posts, she's an elected official. In fact, her profile even said Village Council President Pro Tem of Village of Holly. Okay, so an elected official is censoring speech. Then someone in the group asked, what happened to the post of the village calendar? I was looking for an upcoming event and they're gone. It's a great resource. I thought that was so funny. And April Brandon commented under that post, the ones you're referring to aren't from the village, but here's the answer. We've received several complaints from local venues that feel we're allowing those calendars to show favoritism because those calendars were promoted as a one-stop shop for all local Holly events, except for the businesses and nonprofits she didn't want to promote. Some locals missed a couple events because it wasn't on her calendar. We're not going to take responsibility for the perception of favoritism, as it is unequal advertising, even if that isn't her intent. I think her calendars are a wonderful contribution and asset to the community, and I hope she keeps it up. She's going to have to do it in her own group, though, and fortunately, she got that up and running. Which, mind you, my group had like 200 people. It wasn't nearly everyone in town. Like this is the thing. Most people in town get their news from this Facebook group, okay? So that's why, like, you could post in any other group. There's a few like Holly groups at this point, but none of them are as active and like get their news than this one. Okay, then she goes on to say, any advertisements we permit have been a courtesy, and if a courtesy is abused, it is revoked. Please read the following rule. Self-promotion, and then she lists self-promotion, spam, and irrelevant links aren't allowed. And again, that rule doesn't even equal what she's saying, that I abused the advertisement because I was promoting, like, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm sure I don't need to beat a dead horse, you understand. Anyway, so I responded to her. I said, April Brandon, maybe you missed it, but each and every time I posted, I said, if I missed anything or if businesses have an event, put them in the comments so they are still all on one post. Especially too, just a side note, I really did events that were like free to the public. I didn't do events like the Moose. You have to have like a membership to get into the Moose. Okay. So I did events like, the Legion and stuff, like they did open free events for the public. That's the type of stuff that I would put in there. But if it was like a private business that was like charging people, I would always say, put it in the comments. And most people had no problem with that. I had someone that did like ALS classes, and they put it in the comments because they understood where I stood on that. Okay. So continuing on, I said, this leads to another question. For local businesses or organizations that post, do they need to include all events or not just their own now? It's an all or nothing, right? And she said, I did 2 comments. I said, also, the village puts out a newsletter with events, and they do not include all events, and they and you are government entities. I'm a private citizen with First Amendment rights. Does that mean the village is violating your rules since they do not post everything, and they should be banned from posting their newsletter? And she said, you seem to be confusing me for a government entity in this moment, ma'am. This is a Facebook page, and I am only a Facebook admin here. You do not have freedom in my home or my group. This is not a governing body. The village never claimed to be a one-stop shop. I'm not sure why you're confused. You are allowed to disagree. We will not tolerate harassment. Last warning. I want you to ask yourself, those 2 comments that I put on this post, do you personally believe that that constitutes harassment? And mind you, I've talked to April Brandon, I think twice on the phone. Me and my husband met with her for coffee once. And we've had some, early on, we had some chats on Messenger, but it wasn't a ton. And I especially did not contact her personally or anything about this. This whole situation, it was only these 2 comments here. So do you believe that that constitutes harassment? I'll let you answer that. So someone else actually had to send me this screenshot on her response because she said, you are allowed to disagree. We will not tolerate harassment last warning. But actually, she just blocked me. She blocked me from the group, removed me from the group, and blocked me from her personal page, where on her personal page, she admits that she is president pro tem of the Village of Holly. So her account, and again, my opinion, not a lawyer, the Supreme Court has ruled that if your profile is like you say that you're an elected official in your profile, then that pretty much that constitutes a First Amendment violation right there. So, man, fun stuff. And like I said, she said last warning and then booted me. It wasn't the last warning. I guess that was the final warning, final and only warning. I had never been in trouble in that group for anything ever. And she gave me some random warning that doesn't even follow what she was saying. And that's that. When you look at the situation at face value, you might think, oh, just some Facebook drama. Who cares? But when you really think about it, you have an elected official banning someone for creating a free community calendar and going as far as to block her personally when her page says that she is an elected official. Never had any other issues in the group, and now you are breaking the First Amendment, which is also against your oath of office. You swore to protect the Constitution, and you're violating it. Like I said, this isn't the first time that she's claimed that she has censored people, and this is not the first time that April has claimed that someone harassed her for disagreeing with her. There is an article by the Oakland County Times called "Wallace Arrested, Just One of Several Scandals for Holly Axe Members, Including Local Officials." So we talked about Holly Axe the last episode. Yes, April is part of that group or supports that group, whatever have you. I think all of these people I've talked about are part of that group. And this is a little lengthy, but I do want to read it. I'm going to read this article because it's really important, so you don't just hear it from me, that you hear it from someone else who has experienced this stuff and has had other people report to her that this stuff is going on. So she says, "We learned that Brandon had been removing election-related posts from the group, both from Oakland County Times and from others. She claimed Oakland County Times had violated the rules over 30 times in the month leading up to the ban, yet that simply is not true. People in other groups were posting about their censorship taking place in the group, and it was clear this was a problem impacting the community. On top of it, Holly Axe candidates were campaigning on the issue of transparency. For a candidate to ban local journalism and censor political discussion in advance of an election was concerning. But to also use censorship as a talking point while actually doing it is an even deeper violation of the public trust." In one post, Brandon wrote, quote, "It is our goal to always remain transparent with the public, and we thank you for your patronage. Library Board President April Brandon," end quote. In another post, Watt commented, quote, "I do not believe any elected official or appointed official or forum official should be dictating what happens in a community group. We are a free society to be able to engage on community issues." In another post, Everly spoke. She is another appointed official. Everly spoke against censorship, as if those people questioning her group censorship were actually the ones trying to stifle conversation. She said, quote, "So now the old white men in charge want to further censor what little stands for news in our town. There's so much going on behind the public's back. Threatening this site, the open discussion group, is bullying, and quite likely they are scared of November when they have to listen to our votes," end quote. I don't really know what that's in reference to, but it just shows that all of these people spoke out that they don't agree with censorship, but yet they support it in April Brandon's group. The article continues. Oakland County Times submitted public comment to the library board to document the concern over censorship. Because remember, April Brandon was not only on village council at the time, she was also on the library board. and how it reflects upon the library to be promoting anti-censorship during Banned Book Month while their president is actively censoring others and banning journalism. Brandon's direct response to this public comment was threatening to file stalking charges against publisher Crystal Proxmire if she did not stop bringing up the issue. Okay, you cannot threaten someone for giving a public comment. No one can be, that's Michigan law, Open Meetings Act, okay? People are allowed to go and address their board without fear of retaliation, okay? When any citizen addresses a governmental body with a concern, they should be allowed to do so without government officials threatening them with potential incarceration. Reporters, especially remember First Amendment is free speech and freedom of the press, okay? So she's violating both here. Article says reporters should not be threatened with jail simply for doing their jobs. Responding to a reporter by threatening them with slander and incarceration tends to demonstrate that there are indeed problems worth looking into. The issue of censorship affects all residents, not just Oakland County Times. We published a story at the time about the censorship and the threat. Brandon has since shared that over 10,000 people were banned from the group. After that article, others began coming forward with their own stories of issues with Brandon and her associates, including others who have been banned with what they felt were little to no reasons. Among them was another village council candidate who was denied access to posting in the group and whose comments were being deleted. Now, yeah, I'm assuming she's talking, I think this was from the election at the time, so the 2022 election when Ryan Delaney was running, I think is what she is talking about here. Brandon told the public, every politician and candidate is permitted to post campaign material in this group once a week. We do not give any candidate for any position preference. Yet that was untrue. And when this other candidate wanted to post, Brandon responded by trying to bully them out of the race. Quote, let's just assume for this debate that I'm not going to get a seat. You tell me which to those people shouldn't get a seat so that you can have one. And as I see you so that you could have one instead of so you can serve in one, because you are not qualified to serve. Okay. If you truly do care about this community, you'll get your name off the ballot so you do not take votes away from those candidates, she wrote in a message to the candidate. Wowza. Okay. Article continues. Others submitted examples of manipulated conversations related to the election as well. In another instance, Brandon removed a resident because they had a conservative political meme on their personal Facebook page, then made a post in the group claiming that she wasn't doxing the man, although the post had exactly that effect. The harassment the man faced prompted him to step back from volunteering. The group rules oppose doxing and personal attacks, yet the rules do not apply to her treatment of those she wants to harm. Another person, a transit activist, called Brandon a dino, Democrat in name only, after she banned a number of transit activists from the group who wanted to share information about the transit millage, which she campaigned against. Brandon's response was to tell him she would report them for cyberbullying if he contacted her again to be mean. We learned later that Brandon did file a police report against Oakland County Times publisher Crystal Proxmire. The report claims harassing messages when in reality our contact was limited and professional in nature. Again, I can relate to this. Brandon was sent 2 form emails and the candidate interview series. This is an email sent to all candidates, and there was a brief exchange over which email contact to use moving forward. Then there was the email conversation about the group, during which only Brandon responded with personal attacks. In her police report, Brandon claimed that when she didn't get her way, she, Crystal Proxmire, messaged the director at the library and made false accusations accusing me of breaking the Open Meetings Act and prohibiting freedom of the press. Her accusations had no founding, and I don't find this to be a true accusation against me as a board president, but a malicious act against me as an individual that is admin of a group that she wants to be in on Facebook. Okay. Brandon added, she may have a campaign against me. Individuals verbally attacked me in the Facebook group this week that used to get along with me quite well, evidenced by our personal message history. I know this isn't substantiated by legal evidence. I just want it on record. In spite of having no evidence of stalking, Brandon took to Facebook to say that she was being stalked and that the story was made because of a personal dispute, that Proxmire was angry because she declined to do a candidate interview. She said she could go to the police anytime and that she had a paper trail. Oh man. So obviously my personal experience, you have someone in the press, local news source that also experienced this. And I want to remind you that Kristen Watt did a candidate interview. Crystal Proxmire offers them for $150. You do an interview and she publishes it on her website. She is a local reporter. Right when, things started to go sour, she started to report. Reporters report on good and bad, right? And right when she started reporting on stuff that was happening that were bad, that's when they completely flipped on her and said, she's not a reporter, she's just an angry blogger. So they tried to diminish her credibility. But prior to that, Kristen Watt even paid to do a candidate interview with Crystal Proxmire at the Oakland County Times. So they didn't have an issue with her before. But now Holly Axe is all against her and they're trying to minimize her, which I thought women were supposed to support women, but I guess only the ones that agree with us. I don't know. So something about me is I'm a constitutional absolutist. Why have rules if we're going to break them? Okay. So the First Amendment is first for a reason. If we do not have free speech, if we do not have freedom of the press, freedom of religion, nothing else matters. And when I'm seeing an elected official censor person after person after person, it just goes against everything that our country was founded on. And so elections were coming up. At the time, she was just on council. Ryan Delaney was still president, but elections were coming up. The village president is only in for 2 years. Ryan Delaney was not allowed to run again because he had campaign finance issues. He didn't pay fees, and you're not allowed to run if you're delinquent. So he wasn't allowed to run. And so April Brandon was running. And I was watching very closely if anyone was going to run against her. I really didn't want to run, actually. I just was watching out. And another person decided to run, Jim Perkins. Jim Perkins was also on council at the time. Now, we are nonpartisan. So when you run, you don't actually have a political party next to your name. It just says your name, okay? But a lot of people kind of know where they stood on the political spectrum. Jim Perkins is as far right as you can go. April Brandon is as far left as you can go. And Jim Perkins, I can manage him, okay? I can handle him. He didn't violate the Constitution, so I can deal with that. April Brandon is public enemy number one for me, that she's violating the Constitution. Okay, so I looked at their previous campaign data and there was no way, the math was not mathing. Okay, there was no way Jim Perkins was going to beat April Brandon. It just wasn't going to happen in the current state with all of the censorship in that Facebook group, knowing that everyone gets their news from that group. So I waited to the very last day to see if anyone else was going to join the race, and they didn't. So I did, and I ran for village president. And I knew that if I lost, I would never hear the end of it because my life is so public. I knew when people don't like me, they do a quick Google search, and I knew people were going to be like, oh, you couldn't even win your election. So that thought was in the back of my mind, but I have thick skin. I'm okay. I promise you. So that reason alone is not a good reason to hold back. And if you are contemplating running for office one day, do not let that hold you back. You miss all the shots you do not take. Okay? the fact that you even want to try is a huge accomplishment. And if we had more people in government across the board that just wanted to try, we'd be in a much better position today across the board, locally, federally, everything. But so many people are just so scared to even take the first step. So I encourage you to do that step regardless of the negative consequences. So I collected signatures the day before they were due. I think it was 30 or 35 signatures I had to get. And you always want to get more than you are required to in case some people put their name wrong or in the wrong spot, or if some people aren't actually registered to vote and they're supposed to. And I posted online, and a couple people reached out to me that they want to sign my petition. And one lady, she'll always have a special place in my heart. She invited me over. She showed me her garden and gave me a pepper from her garden. She let me try raw milk for the first time, which is shocking to me because I'm very lactose intolerant, but I could drink it just fine. I'll never forget that day. And she walked me to all her neighbors. It just speaks to our community. Everyone is so close knit. Like on my street, we all know each other. On her street, they all know each other. And she walked me door to door, and I got to meet all her neighbors, and they signed my petition, and I met some really cool people. So I'll never forget that day, and I'm very thankful for her. So that's what I did. I got all the signatures, turned them in. They were approved, and I was officially on the ballot. I was running for village president. Like I said in last episode, if you spend less than $1,000, you can just sign a waiver that you're not going to spend more than that. I figured that I was going to spend more because I was going up against so much. So I think it was like $2,500 I spent total. Most of it I raised by very generous supporters from all over. Like I said, I have a very public life, so I even had people across the country support me, which is just so kind. So, and unfortunately, I hate how much money is involved in politics, but this is why there's so much money in politics, like when you're going in the situation that I was. So not only was I going up against censorship, so I wasn't in this Facebook group. That's where everyone gets their news. And so I was going up against that. My age, I was the youngest one by far. So some people actually saw that as a positive, but some people, I'm sure saw it as a negative. Also incumbents. Incumbents are people who are already elected and they run again. I was running against two incumbents. So I'm brand new. The two other people, Jim Perkins and April Brandon, were already on council, and they were running for village president. So when you're an incumbent, you typically get elected because you have name recognition, and most people vote on name recognition. They're like, oh, April Brandon, I've heard that name before. Check the box. So I was going up against two incumbents, not just one. Also, political leanings. It's a very Republican area. And even though, like I said, Jim Perkins is very far right, but he's even too far right for a lot of Republicans. And then you have April Brandon on the left, and I'm an independent. I'm in the middle. And a lot of people, even though it's a nonpartisan race, a lot of people ask me like, okay, what party are you? And they thought I was trying to avoid the question when I said I'm independent. And honestly, and this was always my spiel, at the local level, everything is nonpartisan. Like we all want nice parks. We all want nice roads. We all want safe neighborhoods. Like, is that right or left? The only thing I could think of is like, I campaigned that I was going to be fiscally responsible. I was going to actually manage a budget because I knew we were in financial strain and that there was poor decision after poor decision. I'm like, guys, we need to really look at this budget. So if you want to call that a conservative value, go ahead. I just see it as like, I went to business school. And that's what you learn. You learn how to manage a budget. I run my own business. I know how to manage my budget. So that was kind of, I guess, like a negative for me that I'm independent. And a three-way race is very difficult because ultimately someone is going to pull votes from someone. And also, there was election interference. And I will play the clip in a second for you to hear. Remember, village manager Jerry Walker at the time, we started out having a fine relationship, but after the FOIA stuff, he completely flipped on us. After I sued the Village of Holly, he completely flipped and tried to minimize me and make it sound like I'm a little kid. I don't know what I'm talking about, all that, even though they settled with me and all that. I sat down with him for a meeting, and he told me, I sat down with him to talk about the water. Our water is super expensive, and like infrastructure and budgeting and stuff. I asked him, do we have a capital improvement plan? Stuff like that. And he brought up that he doesn't like how I'm campaigning, that I'm saying things that I actually have no control over. Like, and you're making it sound like it's all our fault. Like, you're saying we don't have a capital improvement plan. We do. I said, okay, Jerry, where is it? Oh, well, we're working on it. I said, okay, so you don't have a plan. If you can't give it to me, you don't have a plan. So I'm correct when I say that. And he eventually admitted it. But then he said, audio's kind of hard to hear, but I'll tell you and then I'll let you listen to it. Then he said that I have talked to every single staffer, every single person on staff in the village, and they all agree that you're just saying things for political gain. And then he kind of jokes, not that we're all sitting around talking about you, which obviously they are sitting around talking about me. And that's against Michigan campaign finance laws. Taxpayer dollars cannot be used for campaigns. When you have staff members sitting around talking about an individual's campaign, what do you think that is? We're paying them a salary, and they're using that salary to talk about campaigns. He absolutely interfered in this election. Dollar amount, like how much does that cost? Well, that's what I want.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen in December.
And that's great.
But see, I think, so, and I understand that this is election season, but I think instead of potential politicians stating that there is no plan, for potential politicians to say, is there going to be a plan? I mean, I know how to get votes. I didn't run for political office even though I was asked to at the state level because I don't like that kind of politics.
Explain it again. Just say it again for me.
Well, no, I mean, I think part of what you're doing...
You can just call me out. We don't need to be angry.
No, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, I think you're making innuendo and accusations unjustly. And I think you're doing it for political reasons.
I would never do something for political.
That's what it appears.
Okay.
And so there is not a person in the village staff that doesn't believe it. And if every person that's in the village staff, and we don't sit around and have these discussions about you, but if every person in village staff believes that, there has to be other people that believe that too.
So even with everything that I was up against, I just kept grinding. Like I said, I was able to raise some money that I'm super thankful for. And at the time I was running a photography business and I really stopped taking clients. I think the month before the election entirely, I stopped taking clients. So my personal income dropped a lot because I was so focused on the campaign. And I worked so hard because I did not want to wake up the next day after the election and regret anything. Like I never wanted, like if I lost in my head, I want to say that I did everything I could. So with the money I raised, I bought postcards and I spent hours handwriting the postcards, stamping them and sending them in the mail. Unfortunately, I just kind of started that a little late. The first I did a text campaign that was the most economical way for me to, tell the public that I'm running. Because again, I'm going up against censorship, so a lot of people didn't even know I was running. So I made a website. It was super good. Made my own Facebook page and did the text campaign. And one person that doesn't like me in my neighborhood, she posted in April's group that how dare this person get my number and do this, even though candidates do it all the time. Political candidates do this all the time. Yes, not a lot of local candidates, but I had some experience volunteering in a campaign and I had someone who did that stuff, and I paid him. It was like, I think $500, $550 to do that. Where writing like the postcards, I mean, it gets expensive. So I was just able to reach a lot of people, very cost effective, and trying to save the planet a little bit, not having a lot of paper. So April and her friends made a big stink about me doing this text campaign. And of course I couldn't respond to it. They all thought that like I randomly got people's number, like stalked them. No, like your voter information is a public record available online. And that's what, I didn't even have access to them. It was the company I paid for. So did that. A lot more people reached out to me happy that I did that than people that were like fake mad online. A lot of people, again, in April's group don't even live in town, and they were being fake mad. And yeah. I also did an online interview with Crystal Proxmire at the Oakland County Times. They made a big stink about that. Like, how dare you pay $150 to do an interview? But again, I was trying to do everything I could to get my name out there. And I went door to door. I was the only candidate that went door to door. After I started saying on my pages that I was the only candidate going door to door, it wasn't even April. It was her friends, Angela Wallace, the one that got charged with embezzlement, and Kristen Watt, and another community member went door to door. They didn't knock on the door. They just put a door hanger and walked away in my neighborhood. I don't know if they went to any other neighborhood, but I even lost some weight going door to door because it was hot. And and I like to talk to people. I'm a talker. I love to get to know people. So it took me a long time. I spent days doing that. Many nights, everything, trying to reach people where they're at. And of course I try to do it at a good time where try not to catch people at dinner, try not to catch people like in the middle of the day too much and stuff, all that, or too late in the evening. It was kind of a hard balance to try to find a good time to go door to door. But it was funny because some people, not all, but some people, I'd go up to their door and they're like, "Oh, Anna, I've heard about you because of the propaganda in April's Facebook group." And after I talked with them, they were like, "Oh, like you're nothing like what they're saying about you." Yeah. And that's why meeting people, and this is just the lesson in politics in general, whether it's the president of the United States or the president of the Village of Holly, like this is a good lesson. Like, get to know people. Don't just listen to the propaganda about them. Do your own research and make your own opinion. Go to town halls or go to their website, try to meet them, ask questions, go to rallies, whatever. So that was fun, not being able to actually respond to all this propaganda. And to be honest with you, even on my personal page, I kept thinking, do I want to respond to every single lie they told about me? I felt like it would become so dramatic. Like some of these things, I didn't want to get into high school drama. So I decided I did not want to be a part of more divisiveness. There's already enough in this country, right versus left all the time at each other's throats. And I did not want to contribute to that. I remember being, I'm going to age myself young, but I remember being in, I guess middle school or high school. I don't remember exactly at the time, and watching Obama debate. And I kept thinking, like, why do they keep talking to each other? Even when I was that young, I was still in tune with politics. I was like, why do they keep talking to each other? Shouldn't they be talking to like the voters, like the people? And so that is going to shape me the rest of my life. Just knowing that as a kid, that is how I want to approach politics. I don't want to keep talking to another candidate. I want to talk to the people. So while April and her friends were talking about me, I was talking to the people. And I spent a lot of my time, and again, sacrificed a lot of my pay and my business to be able to do this, but it was worth it to me. It was worth it. Every second was worth it. I met so many incredible people, and I don't regret anything. And April's friends would constantly tell people I'm a narcissist, a know-it-all, inexperienced. I always liked that one. That was a good one because like my life is politics. I report on the news and hold politicians accountable. I've met I'm pretty sure I've met like pretty much all of my representatives before. Educated, that uneducated, that was always my favorite one too, because I have a master's degree. But even someone with a master's degree, I say that degrees don't make you smart. But what does make people smart? What does make people educated? Who knows? I guess it's up to personal interpretation. But what was funny is I remember seeing, or someone sent it to me, there was an anonymous post in April's group, and people always, even to this day, anytime they see an anonymous post, they're like, oh, Anna's probably up to this. And even I think April commented and said, yeah, Anna's a lot of things, but I don't think she would hide behind an anonymous post. So I'm glad we have that understanding, me and April, that I'm not someone to hide behind something. I'm just going to say it to your face. So, but yeah, some people still think that I like tell people what to post in that group on my behalf. And there was one time I asked someone to post my campaign interview, and that person put in there, Anna asked me to do this. Okay. It was very well known. And then what was funny, there was a post in her group claiming that I was the one censoring people and blocking people when I didn't. My campaign page was open for anyone. And actually, funny enough, my followings on other platforms, even my news platforms where I have every right to censor people, I don't. I think in the past year, I've maybe blocked 10 people who were like legitimate threats to my life. That's it. Okay. So I do not censor people. And someone posted that I did. And one person commented saying, I hope Matson and any other candidate or official isn't blocking people on an account promoting a political campaign and or office. This is a First Amendment violation, and that is a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. So she was talking about me, but really April was the one that was guilty of that. And April even commented underneath that and said they can, as long as they are not acting as on behalf of the government role, was my most current understanding. Matson has admitted to blocking people on her social media, but counters that they can contact her on her email. Did not say that. As of right now, I mean, yes, I did have a campaign email and anyone could reach out to me. And anytime someone asked to meet with me, I met with them. I never turned anyone down. But my campaign page, no one was blocked. Everyone had access to that. So she said, as of right now, if my understanding is accurate, that would mean Anna can block anyone, as she cannot act in an official capacity, as she is a candidate only and not an elected or appointed official. And then after some back and forth, April commented, I've been studying a bit more here and there today, and all of this is really confusing, but ultimately, I think it does look like your original comment is right. Okay, so April found out actually what she's been doing this whole time has been against the Constitution. So the day before the election, because someone called her out for blocking me, someone else, and the day before the election, she let me back in the group. But I did not go in the group, which may have cost me the election. But I'm okay with that because I was not going to support her behavior. I wasn't going to support censorship. I was not going to stoop to her level. And she created, it wasn't just me she was censoring. It wasn't just Crystal Proxmire, the local news. It was so many people who said anything negative about her. Someone even told me that April blocked her because she laughed at one of April's comments, just did a laugh emoji. So April has created like a mob, like a cult-like following in her Facebook group now. So I just didn't see a benefit the day before the election to go in there. I just didn't. So I ended up losing by 29 votes. April Brandon won. She had 927 votes. I had 898. It was funny too because it was like a rolling count. At first, I had people messaging me saying, congrats, you won. And I'm like, I don't think all the votes are in yet. Wait. And then Jim Perkins had 701. So yeah, I'm really proud of that. With everything I was up against, only losing by 29 votes. I'm pretty happy about that. And you know what? When I saw the results, I had such a calm over me. I just felt like God was like, I got this. Don't worry. Like, I have a plan, and this is all part of the plan. And it was a great experience, like getting to meet everybody and going through the whole process. It's really opened my eyes. Like before, I was like, no money in politics at all. But then I learned, okay, well, you need a little bit of money to help get your name. I mean, even like the postcards and stuff that you hand out cost money. So it really opened my eyes to a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, it was hard because they would lie about so much stuff, even to the lawsuit. They constantly told people that I cost the village money for suing, which I didn't mention this earlier, but the village has insurance, and they use their insurance to sue, fight the lawsuit. So it wasn't even the village attorney that we pay for regularly that was doing the lawsuit. They actually hired, the insurance hired an outside firm, and the insurance cut the check for the settlement. I did not cost the taxpayers a dime. And even if I did not cost taxpayers. The village did for violating the law. There was also another quick story. It's not actually a quick story, but it's one that I want to tell. There was a village council meeting where our fire chief was honoring two paramedics. They delivered a newborn baby premature. It was a very scary situation for them because the baby was so premature. And it was on Christmas Eve. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful speech. And then someone walked in that was watching the meeting online and said, just so you know, this mic is off. So no one heard what you just said. And my heart broke because it was such a beautiful display. Even the mom and the baby were there. And so I went up to the fire chief after. And remember, as a photographer, I do video all the time. It's what I do. I do all types of media. So I asked the fire chief, can we redo it? And can I film it, please? Like at the fire station here, whatever. Like, can we redo it in any way? And at first he was like, no, I don't think we can make that work. But then he messaged me like, yes, I got it all planned out. Come Saturday and we'll redo it. I got mom and baby to come. And I show up to the fire station. Literally, as I arrive, mom messages him that baby is sick and she can't come. But we still did it without her. He read like the presentation and I filmed it. And then we tried to do it again with mom coming. Same thing happened. Baby got sick last second. And so third time's a charm. And so third time, mom and baby were there. We spent quite a bit of time with them recording and stuff. And I ended up making a really cool short film for them. And in that process, because I spent so much time there at this point and got to know our firefighters and paramedics, I was like, wow, you guys are incredible. I've always had a ton of respect for first responders, but like, man, it shot through the roof. I'm like, wow, you guys are really putting everything on the line here. Like, it's just remarkable. I highly recommend you go meet your local firefighters and stuff. They're open 24/7 is the joke, you know? I'm sure they would be happy to meet you and give you a tour. So it inspired me because I started talking about, during this time I am like running for office too. So I'm like asking questions and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I found out our fire chief is the only full-time employee in the department. Everyone else is part-time. And that makes it really difficult to hire because people want full-time jobs. And so there's like all these things me and the chief and other people on staff were talking about. I'm like, well, that needs to change. This needs to change. And it inspired my policy while I was running. And I'm like, okay, well, how can I say I'm going to like fix things if I don't even know how things work? So I actually started going department to department, asking questions and taking tours. So I went to the police station. I even went to the poop plant. I went to the water and sewer plant and walked and was fascinated because our water, they like to say that like we have aging infrastructure and it's going to cost all this money. That's why our water is so expensive. But as I'm walking around, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like the guy that runs like the water and sewer, he's like, yeah, they say that this will last 10 years, but it's been sitting here 40 years and it has another 40 years on it. So you can't like just go off like what they say is like the time frame, you know? So I learned a lot, and I'm really happy I did that. Just for me, like as someone who's very involved in politics, and like I said, like now I can shape my policy talking with them, and I never campaigned on something I couldn't do. Like I never campaigned on something that was out of my control. One of the days that I was at the fire station filming, creating like this little short film for the station, Kristen Watt was there with someone who was running as a House of Representative against my current rep. And this was during Hurricane Helene, I believe. And a firefighter just came home. He's part of a Michigan task force where they respond nationwide to emergencies. And I was just so taken back and so blown away by his sacrifice. And I filmed him coming home, and he talked a little bit about what he saw and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll try to add this in the video if I can. And how I had it framed, the video was just the fire chief and the firefighter in the video. And I posted it saying, you know, I'm very thankful for him and his service. Well, I had a meeting with someone that asked for a meeting with me at the coffee shop, one of Kristen Watt's friends. And Kristen Watt obviously knew I was there, and she kind of like bamboozled me. I was going to get my coffee to sit down for my meeting, and she's like, can I talk to you? And I'm like, well, quickly, because I have a meeting, you know? And she says that she is very upset that I cut her and the guy running for office out of the video. And I said, Kristen, I hear you, but I disagree with you, okay? Like, that was not the point of the video. The video was to celebrate our firefighter, not for a campaign. And I did apologize to her for me posting that video on my campaign page, because I kind of did make it about politics just by doing that, even though I was just trying to celebrate our firefighter. So I did apologize to her. I took it down. But I do not apologize for cutting this campaign person out of the video when it wasn't about him. And that was that. I mean, those are like the types of interactions that I have with this group. And, you know, I'm respectful and I hear them out. And anytime there's a situation, they always complain that I don't go to them and get their side of the story, but then they turn around and do the same thing. There was a situation when I was going door to door, there was a situation with this guy who had a dog, okay? He was across the street. My husband was with me. This guy was across the street with his dog. And I asked him, hey, can I give you one of these real quick? And he said, yes. And I went, the dog's barking as I'm approaching. So I just handed him, I said, thank you. And I said, please consider me. And I walked away. Well, someone posted in April's group saying to the person going door to door running for office, when someone says no, it's no. This person told you not to approach them, and you insisted he take your flyer. And it wasn't even the person that I was contacting. I'm assuming it was like his wife or something. And she wasn't even outside. And I couldn't defend myself in the group. And yet Kristen Watt and her friends were like, oh, I can't believe she would do something like that. And it's like, you guys didn't even come up to me and ask me what happened. You're just taking their side of the story, which is fine. I don't care. But the minute I talk about something that happened with them, like Angela Wallace, I talk about her court case. She says, no, you have to ask me my side. You don't do it to me. I don't need to do it to you. But luckily for me, I actually look at facts. I don't just make up stories. So, you know, like I said, throughout the whole campaign, I really tried, and I did. I was successful in not causing more of a divide. I could have mentioned all of this stuff that I talked about in these episodes, but I didn't, because there's enough division, and I kept my campaign about the things that matter. Our water rates, our parks, our police, our firemen. That is what I focused on. So April gets voted in, and I want to tell you, there's a positive here. I know a lot of people do not have faith in our elections, but I'm telling you, voting matters. And the Village of Holly has proved that voting matters and that you get what you vote for. While I was campaigning on the fact that we need to stop governing out of emergency, we need to plan for the future, we need to make water affordable, life affordable here, and beautify our town, April was running saying that we need to increase taxes to pay for all this infrastructure. We need to raise water rates. And guess what? That's exactly what she did. She increased taxes by 38%. And it was out of emergency too. She had time to call a special election. The village had time to do that, and they didn't. They waited to the very last minute. Within 3-4 weeks, they notified the public that this could be happening, and then they voted it in. And then the next month, people just got their bills. All within a month. Told the public, had meetings, voted in, and we already just got the bill for it. So I think mine's like $500 extra I have to pay this year in property tax on top of all the other stuff I pay for. So she did what she campaigned on. And so I don't tell you to believe elected officials or politicians often, but if they tell you they're going to raise your taxes, I would probably believe that one. And the board that was voted in, there was actually 2 open seats that April filled with her friends. Of course, just like Delaney did, filled it with his friends. April Brandon filled it with 2 people who are yes people that do whatever she says. So this is kind of what I was talking about in the last episode. Like last council, we had a diverse board. This board, we do not. They pretty much all think the same, do the same. And they all are protecting each other, not protecting the public. They have already, in this short amount of time, it's been like 6 months, already they have gone against what the will of the people is. So this board believes in hiding things. They like to say we're transparent, but obviously we know through what's happened in the past, April likes to censor people and hide things and twist the truth. And that's exactly what she's doing in office. So after everything I went through with my first lawsuit, they turned around and broke the Freedom of Information Act again. Now, I have talked about this online, so some people might know a lot of this. I'm going to go through it briefly. I am kind of losing my voice at this point too, but we're almost to the finish line here. And keep in mind, there's so much that is being left out. There's so many things that have happened, and this, I feel like, still is only half of it. Now, remember, Jerry Walker used to be the village manager. He retired. And now we have Tim Price. He, from his resume, he used to be in the Army for like 20 years working on intelligence. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of stuff he did was secret. He was an assistant city manager for a year, I believe, maybe 2 years before this job. And his first week that he was here, there was like a month training, and then his first week after the month of training, I met with him. And I told him, listen, I'm a very reasonable person. I just want to let you know, when I was campaigning, I met with so many community members. And this is like what people told me over and over again. And I just wanted to like let you know, because I feel like I have all this information and someone just needs to know about it. And I told him, you know, I do Freedom of Information Act requests a lot. And I just want my records. Like when I request something, I just want my records. Like that's that, you know, like it's not this big thing that it needs to be. So I told him that like basically his first week. Okay. So I heard from reliable sources, again, hearsay, but I heard from reliable sources that he was asking people if I was running again. And he's a brand new manager. We just had elections. Elections aren't for another year, well, a year and a half now. But why would he care? That's not even his job. as village manager, your job is to work for the people and to execute the things that village council makes, like their budget, their ordinances. Like your job is to execute those things. And I just got done with election interference from the previous village manager. And now I hear the new village manager is asking around if I'm running again. It's completely inappropriate. And I actually told him that. I met with him and I said, okay, so you've been asking around if I'm running again. And he said, no, I haven't. Who told you that? Who told you that? And just kind of got like, so I don't want to say hysterical, but like just very on edge about it. And I said, really, Tim? I said, you've asked people. He's like, who told you? Who told you that? Okay. And I told him right to his face, I said, so now you're putting me in a position where I either need to believe that people I trust are lying to me, or I need to believe someone I don't even know is lying to me. I mean, the more likely is that I'm not going to believe Tim Price because I barely know him. Okay. And knowing that he worked in intelligence, whatever that means, I mean, was it his job to lie? Who knows? And at the time I met with him, I didn't even know that it was against Michigan campaign finance law for him to use any village resources to campaign for campaign purposes. And I really think, I hesitate to say this because I know that this is my opinion, or most people would actually agree with this part. The last council really did whatever Jerry Walker wanted. Now I believe, this is where it's my opinion, now I believe that the administration, that Tim Price, just does whatever April Brandon wants. And I say that because April Brandon wants to know if I'm running again. And also, immediately, he wanted to start going towards cityhood. So villages can become cities by a vote of the people. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like it has to go to the boundary commission and the state has to approve it, all this stuff. And that was something that April wanted to do. And now he's talking about it and he's brand new. So it just makes me believe that like whatever she says, he's just doing, which I guess I understand a little bit because council hires the village manager and she's like the leading voice in council. So if she wants him gone, then he'll be gone. So I guess maybe, I don't know if she's putting him in a tight position, forcing him to do this stuff. I have no idea. But what I know is that village resources cannot be used for campaign purposes. And he has absolutely no right to go around trying to influence an election, get involved in campaigns. His job is simply to execute the budget and the ordinances that council sets. Okay. So then I do a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request. And I said, Dear FOIA Coordinator, pursuant to the Michigan Freedom of Information Act, I am requesting copies of all communication between April Brandon and the village manager from January 1st, 2023 to present day. This includes, but is not limited to, emails, text messages, social media messages, audio recordings, video, and any other forms or records of communication. Please note that this request should encompass communications with both the previous village manager, Jerry Walker, and the current village manager, Timothy Price. I'm also requesting copies of all communication between April and the village clerk for the same time frame and everything, and also the village attorney. If any part of this request is denied, please provide the specific exemption under the act that justifies the denial. I am requesting that the information be provided in an electronic format, if possible, to expedite the process and minimize cost. Okay, so they asked for an extension, which they're allowed to do. Michigan law says that within 5 business days, they can grant the request, deny it in part, or ask for a 10-day extension to do one of the top 3 things. So they asked for the 10-day extension. Then they sent me the invoice. They didn't actually send me whether my request was granted, denied, or denied in part. So they charged me a total of $374.20, almost $400 for public records. And they are allowed to charge, but they have to prove that it would cause like an undue burden if they don't charge. Like there's all these stipulations in the law about how they can charge. Now, I have never been charged by someone who is open and honest and transparent. Like I said, I do FOIA requests all the time. When they are trying to hide something, they charge you crazy amounts like this as the rule of thumb. So they charged me $336.96 just to have not even our village attorney that we pay for on retainer, a separate attorney to redact everything. But yet they claim that they're transparent. If you're transparent, then there's nothing to redact. And this is actually, I wasn't even fighting that at first. At first, I was just asking questions because they charged me $25 for a flash drive. And there was 2 of them, so $50 total for 2 flash drives. And I'm like, I don't think flash drives cost that much. And I just quickly Googled it, and you can get a flash drive for like $2 or $3. And so I emailed the clerk and I said, hello, can you please send me the receipt for the flash drives that you purchased? May I also suggest you find a new vendor as they do not cost nearly that much. I even suggested bringing in my own flash drives, which I've been told by the public, a government should never allow you to do that unless it's sealed in its packaging, because it could be a security threat, which I didn't think about at first, but thank you, public, for telling me that. And she replied back, Miss Matson, please come in and pay the requested deposit for your FOIA information. Okay, I'm asking you to justify your costs, which you have to do. And now that she's made this a thing and pushed back, guess what I did? I submitted a FOIA request for the receipt of the flash drives. Now she cannot just deny me. She shouldn't have denied it in the first place. They have to be able to justify their charges, and she's not. So I FOIA'd the receipt, and she was like, okay, well, this is going to be a new request. I said, yeah, exactly. This is a new request. And then I think it was 2 business days it took for her to respond. Again, she didn't tell me whether it was granted, denied, or denied in part. She just sent me the invoice for $4.66. Now, Michigan law, Freedom of Information Act law, allows the municipality to charge in 15-minute increments, and they have to round it down, okay? If they do charge. They don't have to charge. And most places do not charge for something like this. And again, if you remember, I live in 2 different towns, Holly Township and the Village of Holly. Holly Township responds to my request within the day. I don't think they've ever charged me, but the Village of Holly just can't figure it out, man. So 15-minute increments, and I emailed the clerk because they charged me for one 15-minute increment, $4.66. And so I asked, what was the exact minutes that someone spent locating that public record? Because they have a system, I've been told, that you just literally type in like Staples or wherever you get your info, like your flash drives from. You just type in that in a computer and they all pop right up. It literally should take no more than 3 minutes. And if that's the case, they couldn't charge me because state law says that they have to round down. So I said, hello, Miss Bone. What was the exact number of minutes used to locate the record? Thank you. She said, Miss Matson, as stated on the invoice, 15 minutes. I said, hello, the invoice states the increments charged, not the exact time. Michigan law requires the time to be rounded down. So if it was 14 minutes and 59 seconds, you can't charge me. And then she responds, good morning, Miss Matson. The village does not generate physical timekeeping records for individual tasks such as fulfilling FOIA requests. The time is reported by the individual completing the task. Okay, so she contradicts herself. She says we don't keep time records, but then she says the time is reported by the individual. Okay, so you contradicted yourself and says, as decided in, she quotes a court case. She's not a lawyer, but she quotes it in response to a FOIA request that the public body is not required to make a compilation, summary, or a report of information or create a new public record With this new information, again, once you pay the invoice attached, we will release the FOIA information requested. So after a couple days, I sent another email to Miss Bone saying, I am writing to address a few concerns regarding the status and handling of my recent Freedom of Information Act request submitted to the village. First, I'd like to point out that the deadlines on both of my active FOIA requests have passed. So both requests asking for the receipt of the flash drive and the first one asking for communication with April Brandon, they only sent me the invoice. They did not actually tell me whether it was granted and stuff or denied. So I said, according to MCL, a public body shall, subject to subsection 10, respond to a request for a public record within 5 business days after the public body receives the request by doing one of the following. And I'm quoting Michigan law. And I already told you guys, like, A, grant the request, B, issue a written notice to the requesting person denying the request. See, okay. I said the village correctly issued a notice for May 14th request, but failed to follow its own deadline. A response to the June 4th request was due by June 12th. I did not receive a notice indicating whether the requests were granted, denied, or denied in part as required by Michigan law. This means that the village is now out of compliance with Michigan law on 2 FOIA requests. Secondly, according to the Michigan Freedom of Information Act, public bodies must provide a detailed itemization of fees and a notice of the determination regarding the request. Additionally, the Act requires that the procedures, guidelines, and fee summary be posted on the public body's website if one is maintained. Failure to do so means that the public body cannot charge fees for a FOIA request until compliance is achieved. So I questioned them about $50 for flash drives. And now this has turned into, actually, they're out of compliance, so they have to waive all fees. And I quoted and highlighted exactly the part of the law. And I said, the village does not have the standard form of itemization on their website. Therefore, the village is out of compliance with Michigan law and cannot charge anyone a deposit or fees until in compliance. And actually, I found out from someone who did a request, they sent them the information, wasn't charged, didn't even have to file an official Freedom of Information Act request. I kindly request that the village update the fee itemization sheet to be detailed as required by law. Please ensure that it includes a detailed explanation of the charges, including the actual minutes spent on each task and actual cost of non-paper media. Also, I ask that you address these compliance issues and provide the required notices for both of my requests and the records at no charge by June 19th. I look forward to your prompt response. Funny enough, when I started posting about this online, followers noticed that my first request has flash drives listed as $25, computer disk $25, and other media $25, just a set charge for those. But when I asked for the receipt for the flash drives, they changed it. Now, even though there wasn't a flash drive in this case, they can just email me that record. They changed the cost of the flash drive to $5. So they admitted that the flash drives don't cost $50. And so they should have corrected my first FOIA, but instead they're dragging this out. They admitted in their own itemization that they were wrong at the beginning. And now they quietly tried to cover it up, but you just admitted that you were wrong. So the proper thing would have been like, you're right, let me go back and change how much you are being charged. And then she says, her response to my email said, she's really, really putting the village in a pickle here. Dear Miss Matson, please see the attached link to our website with the FOIA guidelines, procedures, and fee summary. This was published to our website in July of 2023. Additionally, on June 10th, you were sent an invoice via email with the cost of the FOIA request that you sent after hours on June 4th and was received on June 5th. This email stated that the requested information was available upon payment of the invoice. Lastly, your first FOIA request required a 50% deposit of fees, which was emailed to you on June 4th. Since the deposit was not paid as requested, we will not release the information until the invoice has been paid in full. All of this information meets the requirements of the Michigan Freedom of Information Act. I have already talked to an attorney. This is unlawful. You absolutely cannot charge me 100% fee, 100% deposit. That is unlawful. The FOIA guidelines on the website are outdated. They do not have the current itemization sheet as I was sent. So again, we started talking about a $50 charge for 2 flash drives, and now you're looking at court. So maybe the Village of Holly should just take a class on how Freedom of Information Act works, because now what they're going to do when I eventually sue the village, they're going to claim that how could Anna do this to us? How could Anna be suing us and it's going to cost the taxpayers? No. The Village of Holly knows better. We just went through this in a lawsuit where they said they signed that they were going to follow the law, and they have not. The law is very clear that you either have to grant it, deny it, or deny it in part. And the fact that they are charging me $336 for redactions of the records right there shows you that they were probably denied in part at minimum. But then this email is saying, we said your records are ready and you can come pick them up. That's not what the law says. If you denied anything, you have to explain exactly what provision under the law allows you to deny the information. And redactions are denials. So they have to specifically state why, and they have to give me a pathway to appeal the decision. And they have done none of that. I don't even know what to say anymore. I don't even know what to say. And it's like, at a point, why even argue with them anymore? And it's like, I always say, like, court is where adults disagree. So I've worked with them. I've done everything I can outside of court without an attorney, tried to be reasonable. I'm just saying, can you provide evidence of a $50 flash drive? They couldn't do that. And now guess what? We're looking at court. So I'm in communication with attorneys. We'll keep people updated about that. And honestly, there's so much more I could speak about. I mean, really, like I said, I feel like this is like halfway through everything that's happened. But, you know, even recently at the last meeting, there was a council person that made a motion to add something to the agenda. Another council person seconded that motion. And if you've heard language like that, it's called Robert's Rules. First, second, and then they all vote. Well, April Brandon, the village president, said, well, I decide what's on the agenda. So no, I don't want to add it. According to Robert's Rules, the agenda can absolutely be amended, and you have to vote after you have a first and second. So she just said, no, I don't want to add it, and moved on. They didn't even vote on it, nothing. There wasn't discussion. That was completely inappropriate and against Robert's Rules, which the Village of Holly does follow. So now, I'm sorry to say it, and I know this word gets thrown out a lot, and kind of like when April Brandon says people harass her, she like loses its meaning at a point. Like if everyone that disagrees with you is harassing you, like, you know, it just loses its meaning, and it's actually really disrespectful to people who are actually harassed. And I know this word gets used a lot, but how April did that is how communism works. It's how dictatorship works, where one person has authority over everything. And that's really dangerous. It goes against everything our nation was built on. So if one person has complete authority over the agenda, I know recently ethics violations have been turned in against several people. Let's say April decides, I don't want to put it on the agenda. But every other council person does want it on the agenda to vote on whether someone should get censured or not. Well, if it's on the agenda, they can't talk about it, they can't vote on it. So you're leaving all that power up to one person. That's not right. She knows it's not right. She's smart. She knows it's not right. And she knows what she's doing. She's stacking the boards with people that are yes people, and she doesn't want anyone to disagree with her. And she's trying to be queen of the village. And I mean, we just had major protests that there's no kings or queens in the United States. But this is not right. It is absolutely not right. And she needs to apologize, and she actually needs to let votes happen. Agendas can be amended, and she needs to do her research on Robert's Rules, because that's not even questionable. She is one vote. And when I was running, her friends told me, well, why don't you just run for regular council? Why do you have to run for village president? It's the same thing. You get one vote. Well, this obviously we're seeing why it's so important, because if the president has that kind of power, it's not the same. They're supposed to be the same. There's supposed to be checks and balances, but we don't have that right now. So I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep calling this stuff out. I'm going to keep going to public comment, and I'm going to keep talking to the public about what's going on, because it's the right thing to do. You know, why I do this, I think, is it's because I went door to door. Honestly, I really think is a lot of it. Also, I have like this internal thing, like why have rules if you can just break it? So when there's rules, I say you need to follow them. So I've seen them break the rules over and over, and I'm like, what are we doing? But again, I think going door to door, seeing people right where they're at has really impacted me. And seeing people struggle and, you know, and the kindness of the community, just, yeah, I can go on and see how people are living. I want to do something for people that can't, you know, we have a lot of disabled seniors, and I feel like I'm in a position that I can help them. Even if it's just going to public comment and educating the public on what's going on, I'm going to do what I can do. So even if you run for office and don't get elected, you can still have a voice in your community. But yeah, I hope this inspires my community to get more involved, hold everyone accountable. I mean, what we can do right now, we have a year and a half left with April Brandon. I was of the impression that we just need to wait it out. But I'm really nervous that we're not going to survive another year and a half. I mean, she's already increased taxes that is really going to hit people hard. And I don't know where we go from here. It was even really worrisome because her statement, when they voted to raise taxes, she said, yeah, we're going to look in the future to do even more, increase taxes even more. And I don't know where we go from here. And anyone who made suggestions on how we can save money or change things up, she like said, oh, well, those aren't nothing viable here. And she just made a mockery of people who were trying to help. So, I mean, you can do a recall election. It's not something I want to lead. I want the public to decide that. But I don't know how we survive another year and a half, to be honest with you, with things like this. There's going to be a lot to clean up when she's out of office. But it takes the community. So you got to hold people accountable. Come to meetings, email your elected officials, email April Brandon and the rest of council. And everyone else that doesn't live in Holly, I hope you get involved in local government, because I'm sure some of this stuff is happening in your town too. And so much of it goes unnoticed. But as always, let me know your thoughts. Thank you for hanging in there through all this craziness, and I appreciate your support.